So here is a diagram showing kind of a frontal section of the heart so that we can see inside of it. When we look at the heart, we can identify the different sides. So this would be the right side and the left side. This is the right atrium and this is the right ventricle. There are walls between these atria. And so, for example, if we look at this wall, this is what is referred to as a septum. So let me change my color. So we have a septum. So that is a wall. On the outside, we'll talk about the sulcus, which is an indentation, but the septum is a wall. And if we look at this one, it is the interventricular septum. So this is the wall that separates the right ventricle from the left ventricle. One of the things that you'll notice about the heart wall is that it is thicker in the left side of the heart. So this left ventricle is thicker. And the reason for that is that this is the chamber that has to pump more forcefully to get the blood out of the heart and through all of the systemic circulation, right? So up to the brain and down to your toes. And so it actually pumps more forcefully than the right ventricle, which is going to pump the blood up and out to the lungs. You'll also remember that the inside of the heart is lined by the endocardium, but we can also see structures in the heart. So for example, we can see different muscles. So these muscles right here are what are referred to as papillary muscles. And the papillary muscles are connecting to these tendons, which connect to the valves of the heart. So we can talk about those valves as being important in allowing for the one-way flow of blood through the heart. So for example, when blood comes into the atria contracts a little bit and then it goes into the ventricles, and then this valve is going to close. And it is going to, when the ventricle contracts, it's not going to force it in the wrong direction. So blood always comes in and in a very nice fashion flows out. So you don't want blood backflowing. When that happens, that is generally that there is a problem with the valves in the heart. They're not working properly. The biggest valve that has the most problem is this mitral or bicuspid valve located right here. And so this one can oftentimes become damaged and you can get regurgitation of the blood and it going the wrong way. You'll also notice that there are blood vessels here. This is what is referred to as the pulmonary trunk. And then this is the major aorta. And that structure right here where it comes around, that is what is referred to as the aortic arch. Okay, so this is the inside of the heart showing the valves and the chambers. But when we look at the external part of the heart, we can see that there are some really interesting anatomical places here. So this one is really interesting. This is actually called an auricle. So this ear-like structure is an auricle, right? And this just increases the carrying capacity of your atria. This is not the whole atrium. So if we look at this, this is just part of it. It's like a little flap and it has extra space in it. When we dissect the heart, we take off that auricle and you can see that there is a space there, right? So the auricles are part of the atria. We can also see that there is a sulcus. So when we look at the sulcus right here, this is a kind of an outside space, like the interventricular sulcus. The septum's on the inside, the sulcus is on the outside. And so this is a little indentation. And you can see that there's fat there, and there are also blood vessels. These are the blood vessels that actually supply the myocardium, the heart wall, with nutrients and oxygen in order to allow the heart muscle to work. Okay. So if we look at those valves, let's talk about what are called the atrioventricular valves. We have the AV valves, same thing, atrioventricular. The right one actually has a special name. It is called the tricuspid, and that is because of its structure. The left is called the bicuspid, and it is also referred to as your mitral valve. Looking down on these, you can see 3 cusps, right, of the tricuspid, the 2 cusps of the bicuspid, and these are what are going to prevent blood from flowing back to the atria. So prevent blood flowing from ventricles back to the atria. Okay. We have 2 other types of valves, and these are called the semilunar valves. And look, they have these little flaps, and that are like half moons. We'll show it. I'll show you a diagram where they look actually like that. But those are what are referred to as the semilunar valves. So these prevent backflow of blood into the ventricles. So there's 2 of these that describe what blood vessel that they're preventing backflow from. So we have, for example, the aortic semilunar valve, and we have the pulmonary semilunar valve. The interesting thing about these valves is that they are mechanical. And so they actually open and close in response to changes in blood pressure as the blood moves through the heart. And then also as the blood forces, it can actually come back down and close, say, for example, the semilunar valves. So let's look at a diagram that shows that. This is actually a dissection of a sheep heart, I think, probably, or I guess this could be a human heart. Our hearts are about the size of our fist, interestingly. You can see that this is showing the AV valves. They're between the atria and the ventricles. That's one of the ways to remember them, between the atria and the ventricles. So blood moves in from the atria to the ventricle, and then when the ventricles contract, they actually exert pressure back, which closes the valves. So the valves are essentially mechanical valves. They're not like being open and closed by a nervous impulse, for example. So it's just pressure differences that are opening and closing the valves. So here you can see this is a valve that has closed. You can also see kind of the role of these tendons, right? And because they allow the valve to connect to the heart wall via what is called the papillary muscle. A papilla looks like a nipple. And so that's why those are called papillary muscles. They look like little nipples coming up out of the walls. If we look at the semilunar valves, they are interesting because they open when the ventricles contract and they force blood up and out. And then as soon as the ventricles relax, that blood comes a little bit back down, and it is that flow of blood, it gets caught in these cusps right here, the cusps of the semilunar, and that is actually what physically closes the valve. And so it's a very interesting mechanism for allowing the one-way flow of blood through the heart.